like I remember a lot actually from the war. And I remember my family like kind of coming together, and we had to like create weapons because you don't know when these rebels would come and overtake your community.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Adopted Gals podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. First of all, before we get started, this is our disclaimer as always. Our channel, we talk about many different topics, and sometimes it can seem like we don't really like adoption, but that's not true. We love adoption over here. We just want to make sure, you're educated through that process so children are not getting hurt. And it's also a better option between you and your child. And also, if you are an adoptee who is looking to share your story, email us at adoptedgals.com, and we will love to have you and to hear your story on our channel.
Yes. So today we're diving into actually a little bit of background on what happened in our hometown in Sierra Leone. And it's honestly very, very heartbreaking. And it's about the complexities of the Civil War. They call it the Blood Diamond War that happened in Sierra Leone. Essentially, it's like a story about like greed, survival, and really resilience of our people, of Sierra Leone people. And at the end of the day, this is why we ended up being put up for adoption. So we're just going to break down the history of the Civil War. I have my notes here, so I'm going to read off of my notes, and then we're going to kind of come back and circle into our adoption story. And so let's get into it. So first of all, what sparked the war? Like what made the war happen? To start off with, it was around, I think, 1991. The country was facing serious problems. Sierra Leone has always, for the most part, had very bad, government corruption, poverty, and complete lack of trust in political leaders. So eventually, this group called the Revolutionary United Front, RUF, that's also what they're known as, it was led by someone named Foday Sankoh. I hope I'm pronouncing his name. And so he was also supported by the Liberian rebel leader called Charles Taylor. He was a horrible man, very, very bad guy, and his group. And the group was called the National Patriotic Front of Liberia. And so both these groups got together and they attempted to overthrow the government of Sierra Leone president. His name was Joseph Moma. And so this is kind of what sparked the beginning of the war, was these two groups of people saying, okay, we've had it. The people of Sierra Leone saying, we've had it, and we're going to overthrow the president. At the end of the day, the Sierra Leone Civil War was really one of the bloodiest wars in Africa, resulting in more than 50,000 people dying and 500,000 people displaced in a nation of 4 million people. So it's already a small country, very, very tiny country. And so you can just imagine, just by these numbers, how much of an impact this war was. So basically, the fight of this war, the whole idea of this war was to promise to the people that these issues, this fight would create a change and people will be able to get better government, led by better government. But instead, it was the complete opposite. The war, really plunged the country into a huge nightmare. So at the end of the day, the war did get really, really intense. And the horrible part about it, and the reason why the war was known as like the Blood Diamonds, was because the RUFs were being funded by the RUF was funding its rebellion by controlling Sierra Leone's rich diamond mines. So they're basically being funded by these diamonds, and there were like children and young boys that were basically being enslaved to work with these diamond mines. And they were sold to buy weapons and fuel the violence.
Sorry to cut you off. And if you want to just a gist of the story, there's a movie called Blood Diamond. Leonardo DiCaprio is in it. You can watch it. Of course, that's just a gist of it, so that it'll kind of help you understand of what happened in our birth country. Sorry, girl.
No, it's okay. No, that's a great. Whenever I tell people, "Oh yeah, like I'm from Sierra Leone," they always bring up that movie because
Mhm.
it really does kind of show what, like, some of the dangers and what people
Mhm.
went through during that war. So basically, to wrap it up, these blood diamonds became notorious around the world because, like I said earlier, they were literally being used to fund a war that destroyed countless number of lives. Um, and as you can imagine, the war was beautiful, like was very brutal. The RUF, they used very horrifying tactics.
Mhm.
They attacked civilians. There was mass amount of rape. There was brutal mutilations. People were being forced to watch as family members were tortured, heads chopped off, arms chopped off, and in many cases, children were recruited as soldiers from as young as like 8 to 10 years old. Um, the violence was just endless, it's just continuing on and on and on. I think it happened, it was like about 12 years or something like that. And you had a lot of innocent people who were just caught up in this and they were forced to be a part of this war. They had to choose a side. Um,
Yeah.
and just a little bit of personal story. Like I remember a lot actually from the war, and I remember my family like kind of coming together, and we had to like create weapons because you don't know when these rebels would come and overtake your community, and so you always had to be on guard. And I remember like seeing like women like pregnant, like running from markets with their arms chopped off because the rebels came and they just completely,
Mhm.
um, started attacking like
Oh my
innocent,
gosh.
innocent people. It's very disturbing.
Yeah.
But anyways, just to wrap it up, so eventually the whole world kind of started to hear about what was going on, and so British troops intervened to try to stop the violence. There was just like a lot of chaos. Eventually, the war did end officially in 2002. But even after the war, the aftermath was not easy. Sierra Leone had to like really start from scratch, dealing with a lot of trauma, a lot of deaths. And I don't think Sierra Leone has really recovered from that war at
No,
all.
it really hasn't. And to just take it back a little bit, excuse me, I didn't realize how heavy this topic was going to be. I really thought we were just going to read off facts and just keep it like that. But there's a lot of memories, of that happening because the war started in 91 and I was born in 95. I was born in 96. So we were like born in the middle of this. So we grew up basically, essentially, as children during war times. And we'll share a little bit of our stories and the things that we've experienced, like how it has started sharing. And I remember my mom, she actually told me the story. She said that when I was a baby, we were running from the rebels, and she said she had dropped me
Mhm.
and she went back to get me. And I'm like, oh my God, like that woman really loves me to go back and get her child. That created such a deep appreciation for my mom and why I don't know, I'm so protective of her. Outside of that, it was just, I don't have baby pictures of me. I don't know what I look like as a baby because during the war, when it's time to pick up and run, it's about your life or material things. So I don't know what I look like. And that's what my parents told me that, and that's why I don't have baby pictures of myself. I remember running a lot from rebels being very young. Like one of the stories that I had, we had ran to my parents had sent my siblings and I to live with my grandma and my aunts and sisters. Or yeah, I remember sitting in a room and we were just playing, and then my aunt came in screaming and yelling, like, "Pack up your stuff, we gotta go!" Like, and I'm like 5 or 6 at this time. I don't remember how, but I remember it. I was very young, but I remember it. So she grabs what she can grab, and she was holding me and my other siblings, and we're like running through the jungle. We're running through the jungle, and I'm scared, freaking out, scared. And all of a sudden we heard, wow, YouTube is definitely YouTube is definitely going to demonetize this.
They're like,
We're not making money from this at all.
at all. They didn't even block us.
Yeah. Well, we were running, and all of a sudden we heard gunshots behind us. And we had to hide behind, like, in swampy water behind these trees. And my aunt is like telling me, shh, be quiet, be quiet. And that's when I knew, like, oh my gosh, like, this is bad. This is really bad. So we sat and we waited for a long time. Then we came back out and we went back to our houses, and our houses were burnt down, like just burnt and away. And that story will always just freaking stick with me. And the war really had a detrimental, just not on everybody, but also the internal side of my family. My mom and dad got divorced because my dad left. I don't know if he was recruited into the war or if, on the good side, of course. Okay, I don't want people to think my dad was on the bad side. I don't know if he was that or he was looking for a job to kind of help support our families. And my family, actually, my parents ended up getting divorced, and he was out of my life for a period of time, trying to make sure that we were okay, financial wise and stuff like that. But if you come across a Sierra Leonean and they're comfortable enough in telling you about their story, just ask. And the brutality that so many Sierra Leoneans went through, and it was so sick. It was sickening, and it's still very much a huge scar in Sierra Leone. It's very, very, very still deep. And wow, this is a little heavy. Go
Yeah.
ahead, How. I know you have your.
I didn't realize our stories are so similar. Like, I
Mhm,
mean, I knew obviously whenever people ask me,
mhm.
and I just ask me about you, and I'm describing, I'm like, well, just think of me, like just another version of me, like
Yeah,
my twin
yeah,
sister in life experiences. But I
yeah.
really didn't realize how similar our experiences were, because even with my parents, my father ended up leaving as well. Uh,
Really?
yes,
I'm surprised we never talked about
war.
this.
Yeah, because of the war, because he was scared because he didn't want to get recruited.
Maybe that's why my dad left.
Yeah, there were a lot of the men were fleeing. Like if you
Oh,
were
okay.
a man, and especially if you were like an older, under like 50, like you were definitely
Mhm.
going to get recruited. And so a
Okay.
lot of men, as soon as they found out about this war and this recruitment, they were trying to flee. So they
Got
were,
it.
yes, yes. And
Okay.
so my dad was never really in my life because of that. And he
Yeah.
went to like a neighboring, he had to like get out of town. If he had
Mhm,
more resources, I'm sure he would have gotten out of the country. But I
mhm.
think he went like maybe like 5 hours away from where,
Yeah.
my family were. Um, and also I remember my mom, actually, my birth mom, we just had this conversation where I was asking her for like if she had any pictures of me, and she was like, you know what,
Mhm,
like, you know I don't have any baby pictures of you. The only age I had was like starting at like age 8 or something like that, like
mhm,
6 or 8. And she
mhm,
was like, because we were running so much, we
mhm.
we didn't even have time to take pictures.
Yeah.
Um, it was the least of our priorities, right? So we
Mhm,
had to run. Like we didn't know when the rebels were going to be coming, and we had to run. And like you were saying, like I just remember like every time I dream about and think about this time in my life, this period of time in my life, I just see a lot of like of our houses and our huts being burned down,
mhm,
like running from one hut to another and literally running and seeing it being burned down.
mhm,
And um, now it just all seems so surreal because it was so
mhm,
long ago. Um, but we have our biological family that
mhm,
are really living the everyday aftermath and
mhm.
the effect of this war,
Yeah.
and it's affected. We know that it's still affected our country because of the government is still very corrupt.
Mhm,
Finance, job opportunities, there's not a lot of job opportunities. uh,
mm.
People are just like
It's just
very,
destitute.
very poor, and there's really not much they can do at this
Mhm.
point,
Yeah.
and there's just so much of a lack of hope
Mhm,
in life in general. Like people just don't have hope, you know, they don't
Yeah.
even try. And so it's very, very sad. Um, yeah, it's just very, very sad. And there's been multiple times where I know I almost died, and from the effects of the war. And
Mhm.
I know my birth mom, my sibling, she had my birth mom had it was five of us all together, but all four other children passed away during the war. So I'm the
Yeah.
only one that survived. And I honestly think the main reason why I was able to survive, well, one, we were just talking about me being a child. She was like, "You were such a strong baby." She was like, at the time you were like 5 months, your brother was like 5 years old, and
Mhm.
he was just always getting sick. And then with the war, he died, but you never got sick. You were just so strong. You were so happy.
Mhm.
You were so bubbly, and I loved hearing those kind of stories about myself. My childhood
Mhm.
and being a baby. And she was like, "You were just so strong." And I think one of the main reasons why I was able to make it was really because I got adopted. And I
Yeah,
was
same.
in that orphanage, you know. Um, I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't gone to the orphanage.
Yeah, same. Like again, we're so similar in our stories. Like my mother had like 10 children. There's only three of us left. And during the war, dying during the war, my brother says he's not very clear in how they passed away. He says it's from disease. I don't know if some of them passed away because of the war, or before I was born. So you're right. Like we definitely did survive because the war ended in 2022 and we got adopted in 2024. And it's definitely being adopted that saved us, because for me, I know I was very, very, very sick during that time. I had all types of parasites, malaria, in and out of the hospital, y'all. I was a very, very sick child. And of course, being adopted, I can say it saved me. My adoptive parents saved me. They really did. Um, and I remember just coming here into the States, and I was in and out of the hospital for a long time, just making sure I was okay, getting rid of parasites, malaria, and all that stuff. It was bad. It took a lot to really get me back to being healthy. And in that regard, we are very, very, very highly blessed. And I
Yeah.
think there's a reason why you and I had that opportunities, and our friends and our families did not get that, but we did. So I'm always, what's my purpose is a bigger purpose in all of that, and how I got adopted and being saved. And I think a lot of also part of that purpose is helping our families back home. um but yeah, it's it's surreal. It's sitting back and recounting the things that happened and the mess and the trauma and the hardship. So it's like, so a child, basically children like us who grew up in war, and then you bring in children like us into your home, like
Oh,
I'm sorry. I can totally understand how hard that might be for you too. But thankfully that we did not get recruited. Like were children who were recruited into that. I cannot imagine the trauma.
yeah.
We
And I
haven't
actually
compared to them.
know, I know somebody that was recruited into, yeah,
Oh,
he was recruited. You don't know him. I don't want to say his name.
oh, okay, yeah, true,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I knew somebody that was recruited, and um, they they have
Oh
their
my
own
gosh,
set of, yeah, they have their own
demons.
problems. But yeah, this what you were saying, it's like we survived war, and then now we're adopted, and the expectation is for us to just be
Hmm.
able to go on like
Yeah,
normal children would, right? And that's just impossible. That's um very,
yeah.
very much so impossible. And we have just grown up to be such beautiful women inside and out, and the opportunities we've been given, it's just like
Hmm.
I feel like only God could have done that. You know what I mean? Like, because I have friends who were from other friends from Sierra Leone, the orphanage, and one in particular I'm thinking about, she almost got adopted. And I just remember, I don't know if you remember her, but her name is Asiatu. She almost got adopted. And I remember the day of, we were all celebrating her. You know, we sang songs. We were just so happy when one of us got adopted and got the chance to go to America. And I remember at the end of the day, in the evening, she just was coming down the stairs, crying, tears, just like bawling, because for legal reasons, she wasn't able to get adopted because it turned out her father didn't want her to get adopted.
I remember the story. The more you tell it, the more I remember.
He didn't know that she was being put up for adoption, I believe. And so yeah, it was just like very sad seeing that. And, you know, I have heard about her recently, you know, what she's up to in Sierra Leone, and she's just not in a good position financially. She has a baby she can't take care of. You know, it's kind of sad. And so I'm very grateful for what we've, the opportunities we've been given, really have. And I just like think about my parents and I'm like, I want to do so much for them because they have survived so much. Like at one point on YouTube, I don't know if they still have these videos. There were actual live videos of some of the what do you call it? Like the
footage of the war.
Footage of the war, but what is it? It's like mutilations that were happening. There was at one point it was on YouTube and you can watch it in real time, and it was like so disturbing. I'm like, how is this even on YouTube? You know, how is this on YouTube? But it's it's disgusting, honestly. It's just I can't even stomach some of the stuff that I was able to see. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So y'all, sorry for that heaviness. I didn't think it was going to be this heavy, but we felt like we wanted to give y'all a background of part of the reason why we got adopted in our countries, just to make it more personal to you, for you guys to understand us more on who we are, why we talk about adoption, and why we think it's so important to talk about. I don't know how, if you have anything else to add. Other than that, we can just end this video. It's kind of heavy. I'm definitely gonna go and relax and woosah, burn some sage.
I need to go burn some sage,
do some just relaxation, because that was really heavy. We've been through some stuff, but we're here and we're resilient, and we will always be resilient. And thank you guys so much for being part of this channel and supporting us, listening to our stories. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to be part of our story. All right. Bye.
Next time. Bye.